Hello, Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Fire Force Chapter 302. When we last left our heroes, things were starting to wrap up in a, let's say, less than satisfactory manner. I've never been shy about my disdain for Soul Eater prequel theory, and it's looking more and more like that's the ending we're going to be getting. Though, on the good side, we have Charon finally brings Haumea out from behind the curtain and sort of... It feels a little bit easy how quickly she sort of embraces this new life, but I've always been touched by the kind of father-daughter Charon Haumea bond, so I'm okay with it. But the despair is still left behind the curtain, now very recognizable as the three-eyed look of Ashura's madness from Soul Eater, which again, not big on. And Shinra just kicks it away, which is a little bit unsatisfactory, and also means that it probably is tied into that despair somehow becomes madness by Soul Eater or something. Anyway, back in whatever plane of dimension the Pillars' souls are in, the four still dead Pillars have some decisions to make. We see, the end result of a character arc for Iris that we never got to see, as Amaterasu gives her blessing to live for her. Even though, we never got to see Iris's initial reactions to learning to the doppelganger, it feels like there was so much missed opportunity with Iris in the final arc. Inka also just kind of decides to live again, so good for her. Sumire and Amaterasu decide to pass on and die. And then, just when it seems like everything is done, the little totem of death that Shinra kind of conjured in 300 is sentient, for one thing, and has decided that it's time to kill Shinra. So that's where we left off. Let's dive right on into Chapter 302, Divine Judgment. And our cover just continues our story right where we left off, with Shinra, Haumea, Inka, Iris, and Charon all standing in front of this sort of wheel emblem with Death's skull mask at the top. Just as everything was seemingly resolved, a supernatural being appears. But what is it? We also have the Soul Eater's son behind it, just to remind us where we are. Anyway, Death continues. His last line last week was, "I have no reason to let you continue living." He then picks that up, "It's time for you to die." And Inka's just sort of not big on this, but I've just managed to come back to life. What the heck? Again, Inka just feels like a character that really could have been written better. Her sudden decision to kill herself with at Haumea's command or whatever never really tracked for me. And as a result, her decision to bring herself back to life and to now resist death similarly doesn't make much sense to me. But whatever, I complained about that a lot last week. Charon just tells her, "Stay back!" And Sho, back in Shinra's mindscape, is just confused. "Whoa, brother, what's going on?" And Shinra just tells him, "It's the arrival of a being that this world needs." Needs? That thing? So, that's an interesting kind of line there, because I can sort of understand, I'm trying to think of admittedly, I'm only at the start of the Baba Yaga Castle arc in Soul Eater, but there's this thing in Soul Eater, so how do I put this? What I'm assuming Shinra's getting at there is that because people's death wounds, because their stigmata don't actually kill them anymore, they need death to kill them, which I guess could tie into Meisters having to reap souls in Soul Eater, but also, do people not die in Soul Eater unless they are killed? Does no one die of old age or sickness or something? I don't know. And if the weapon doesn't eat a person's soul, does the soul just, come back to life or something? That doesn't seem right to me. But I don't know. Maybe Soul Eater does go into that a little more. Anyway, needs that thing? And Shinra just tells him, "It's God." Okay. Can we count that as a mark against Soul Eater prequel theory? Because Death isn't God in Soul Eater, is he? I mean, he's a Shinigami, a death god, so maybe, but I don't know. And Sho just panics, that horrifying looking thing? And Shinra just questions, isn't the idea of people making up and worshipping a god they can't even see sort of crazy? So I manifested one. An absolute being. A god to rule death. Okay. So I've always been a fan of a lot of Fire Force's ideas of faith. Of the idea that even a false faith still provides comfort to people, and that comfort is inherently valuable. So I'm not quite sure this kind of final comment Shinra makes of, isn't it crazy people worshipping a god they can't even see, sort of goes against all of that thematic work Okubo did in the past. Anyway, that a god to rule death does put this back in the Soul Eater prequel theory camp, unfortunately. Anyway, Sho's sort of stunned. God to... And Mari sort of recognizes it. It's a skull, huh? And Shinra seems to, be acquiescent to God here, even though Shinra himself created this god, which kind of ties in again with the Evangelist's own creation of God. I don't know, I feel like the Evangelist's whole story... I feel there's a story to the Evangelist that we never really got to see. Anyway, Shinra says, "My lord, we're all ready." And God looks at him, "A fine attitude. Now die." And all of their souls kind of come out of their bodies. Shinra and Iris and Inka and Haumea. As Inka's just kind of pissed. Seriously? And as... I think Shinra has both the souls of Mari and Sho in there as well. They also pop out. And Shinra notes, "I don't need it anymore." And with that, Shinra returns to normal. Mari and Sho re-emerge from Shinra Bancho Man's form, and Shinra becomes his normal self again. And the souls sort of float around God. "You all possess a power far too great for mankind. I'll be confiscating it." Okay. Is that flame powers? All of the ignition abilities are gone? Sho asks, "Our powers? And you took 7 of them? But there are only 5 pillars here." Oh, those are specifically the Adola links. The powers of the pillars. Because that does make sense. You only see them pop out of Haumea, Inka, Shinra, and Iris. And what I assumed was the 2 extra souls popping out of Shinra were 2 souls that we hadn't seen already, separate from the soul we see from Shinra in the previous panel. I guess it's just why am I blanking? Just Shinra and Sho. But he only has 7, which Sho notes, because only 6 of the pillars are alive. So who is he count? So God's next line is, "I've already claimed them from those missing." But that's still only 7 of the 8 powers. Or of the 8 pillars, right? So is he maybe not counting Amaterasu because Iris is in a sense Amaterasu or something? I don't know. I would have liked to take all 8, however. It seems the last one is somewhere outside of this world. Okay. Hold on. And we focus on Benny. One of the two lights came from Benny. Conrad looks at him, "Benny? It's like something was pulled out of me." And then we see Nataku and Kurono, as Nataku notes it too. And Kurono turns to him, "What is it?" That's weird. Nataku I get, but Benny was never a pillar. I mean, I guess the Titanic Infernal of the 7th pillar was specifically for him. But that doesn't really make him a pillar. So... And then the last one is somewhere outside of this world. Because... So if the pillar's powers that he confiscated or whatever came from the 5 pillars who are currently with him, Nataku and Benimaru, then what's going on with that means that Sumire and Amaterasu both sort of took their powers with them to death. And so, I don't know. Also, the somewhere outside of this world kind of implies Arthur. But, like, what do... Like, Benny and Arthur just weren't pillars. That wasn't a thing. So I have no idea what that's about. But anyway, we come back to the gang with God, and Haumea just sort of flicks Inca in her forehead. Inca, like, rubs her head. Ow! What was that for? And Haumea asks her, Inca, how's your precognition doing? And Inca looks around, huh? I can't see anything. And Haumea notes, I can't hear anyone's thoughts either. And Shinra tries to activate his flames. My pyrokinesis is gone too. And Charon, it's not just you guys. My power is gone. Though I thought Haumea was sort of separated from the collective unconscious last chapter, when Charon took her out of the curtain of despair or whatever. But it does seem like God here is taking away the powers of, like, all the flame powers in the world, not just the pillars. So again, all kind of weird. And Iris notes, so then, that means spontaneous human combustion has disappeared from the world. Yeah, I guess that's a good outlook for all of this. And then God tells him, well then, I think I will be disappearing from this world. And Shinra tells him, thank you for everything. But Sho calls out, disappearing? But where to? And God tells him, somewhere a god belongs, I suppose. I'll make a place like that, and then I'll go there. If you need me, just give me a call. 4242 564. But again, tying this into Soul Eater prequel theory, I suppose it might work better if I was finished with Soul Eater and, like, knew whatever possible twists come up in Death's story. Because I feel like there are some, like, from where I'm at, I feel like there are some, like, secrets that Death is keeping about his own past. Because of that, I can't really say, when he says he's disappearing from the world, if this is the Soul Eater world, it feels like he's leaving. Like, leaving the world, which Death didn't do, because Death is still in the world during Soul Eater. But then there's also that, I'll make a place like that, and then I'll go there, which could refer to Death City, possibly? I don't know. But also, unless Shinra recreated all, like, the continent from pre-first Cataclysm, so much of Soul Eater takes place in actual real-world locations that don't really exist anymore in the Fire Force world. So I just don't fucking know. Anyway, God just vanishes. So long. And Shogun gets this half-wave in confusion. What? And he just sort of notes, it was certainly as you said, brother. A supreme god. Though he seems quite casual. And going back to Soul Eater, because, you know, sure, Death in Soul Eater is really casual, really kind of funny, but it's a point in Soul Eater that he became that way. He doesn't start out his own life that way. He started out as sort of serious, gloomy reaper, and then he started a school, and he says, like, that scared all the kids, so he became this sort of jovial death god. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how this like, it feels like it's very much leaning into Soul Eater, but it doesn't quite feel like it's really being Soul Eater, if that makes sense. Which, I mean, I'd very much like this to not be Soul Eater and just be a whole string of coincidences. But whatever. Shenmue sort of grabs his brother by the shoulder, though. More fun that way, right? You don't have a problem with it, do you? And Sho comments, not a problem, no. And then we cut to Mari, who is notably, despite the fact that spontaneous human combustion is no longer a thing, is still in her infernal form. You both work so hard. I'm proud of you. And Sho notes that too. That form. Not very motherly looking, is it? But she, like, opens her demon mask, her infernal mask, and we see the human grin beneath it. But the world is different now. Why get hung up on appearances? And then, I think this is Inka approaching Mari. Are you Shinra-kun's mother? And Mari turns to her. Yes, I certainly am. And Inka then says, I'm Inka, and this is Iris. We're Shinra-kun's girlfriends. And Iris is like, huh? Inka-san? Okay, you know what? I'm glad Inka can be a little just weird and fucked up here at the end. It's what she deserves. And Shinra snaps at them, What are you talking about? And Mari turns to look at her son. Shinra, Both of them? No, it's not like that, Mom. I'm not like that with either of them. And Mari looks at them, really? They both seem like lovely girls. And Inka gets all like buddy up with Shinra, playing up the gag. It's okay, Mrs. Kusakabe. I'm not sure if Mrs. is the right term there. She was never married, but I'll ignore that. Shinra-kun's the hero who saved the world. He deserves 2 girlfriends. 3 even. I don't even care if I'm not the first. And Iris sort of also, not to the same degree that Inka does, but kind of leans on Shinra's arm. Shinra-san, do you feel that way too? And Shinra grins. It's the same awkward grin from like way back in the day. We haven't seen that uncomfortable grin in a long time. As he throws himself away from Inka and Iris. And Mari looks at him, you're smiling. No, Mom, this is... and Shinra notes, the same thing that this obvious bit, that he's back in that uncomfortable demon grin. Yep, my face is definitely freezing up. Then he turns to the gathered gang. Anyways, everything's all settled now. No reason to stay here. Time to go find the 8th. That seems to be the end of the main story of Fire Force. It's just, I guess the next 2 1/3 chapters are going to be like wrapping up times. And Iris sort of agrees, that sounds good. But Mari looks at him, the 8th? I made a promise, didn't I? There were a lot of people I wanted to introduce you to. This is a new world. One that's found hope. Okay, so this very much seemed like the setup of like a credit sequence. Like, if this were the anime adaptation, we'd have this line, and then, like, shots of Shinra reuniting with everyone as, like, the credits play over it. But we see the Soul Eater Moon, and this much more, like, gothic cityscape, which feels sort of Soul Eater-y. I used Vulcan and Lipson smarts to build this world. There's probably going to be all sorts of differences from the old one. And we see some, like, animals in the jungle, and like a dinosaur, and then Shinra looks up to the sky, and it's all thanks to you protecting it. A place that I could come back to. And it's Arthur, who is still just floating in space. He's vibing. My man's just vibing. They're sort of like mind speaking, it feels like. As Arthur just gives him a heh. And then Shinra tells him, I got back first. Now it's your turn to come home, my friend. And then we see Company 8 all gathered together. Obi still having his X on the neck. I'm a little confused why Arrow got back into her white-clad robes, but whatever. I will say, though, I had figured, like I said at the beginning of the video, that Death's whole "It's time for you to die" would tie into how people can die in this world, where death just isn't really it's a world of death, and people just, like, come back from their death wounds like that. And God didn't really bring it up at all. So Obi still just has that slit in his neck. And Shinra comes home with Mari and Sho and Iris and Inka, notably no Haumea and Charon. And Shinra gives a salute. Special Fire Force, Company 8, second-class fire soldier Shinra Kusakabe returning from the fire scene. I have extinguished the flames consuming the world, and the human race is now safe from combustion. So a lot of the show's both military themes and religious themes have kind of been lost as the show went on. We kind of had God return, but like less of the fact that this is a religious military unit has been less of that fact has been made as the series has gone on, as I think we all kind of know. And I do like a callback to at least one of those themes. They are soldiers to an extent. So we have this last bit at the very end of Shinra being a soldier. But with that little bit of formality aside, they just have a big old group hug. We have Obi, slinging his arm around Shinra, and Vulcan, ruffling his hair. I think that's Tamaki giving Iris a big hug, as the rest of the gang all sort of crowds around them. And Sho and Arrow watch. Kind of uncomfortable as... Oh, no, that's not them watching. It's them looking at each other. Them sort of having found each other again. And we see this natural smile from Shinra. I'm not sure when it was that my face stopped tensing up, and I started to smile like normal again. Actually, I do know. It was the moment that the boy who was called the devil found hope. The day I joined the 8th. And we see Shinra, like, his old-timey fire soldier gear with his old school hat. And this big grin. Okay, I can't stop smiling at this. And then we see End above the Special Fire Force Cathedral 8. But also says just 2 more chapters till the end. To be continued in Epilogue Part 1, A World Without Spontaneous Human Combustion. Okay. So this does, to a certain degree, kind of feel like a final chapter. Like, I'm glad we're having a little bit more, just to, like, I don't know, I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this. Because what I said earlier about that, this is the new world, one that's found hope bit, about it feeling like the bit that starts the credits for a series finale, right? I stand by that. It really does feel like that. It's a bit of a here's what's happened to the world in this new world. A bit of a, like, almost a cliffhangery future goal. You know, it's time to rescue Arthur, which maybe that's what the epilogue is about. But then it's also just this nice reunion. It's all real cute. It's all real cute, and it feels very kind of climactic. Which is weird considering this somehow has to become Soul Eater. Supposedly. To be quite frank, the more this chapter, like after the last chapter, I was like, damn it, this is going to be Soul Eater, and I'm not happy with that, but whatever, that's the world we're living in. The more this chapter went on, the more skeptical I became. Because a lot of this doesn't really feel like the world, now that we're seeing more of it, doesn't really feel like Soul Eater's world. You know, I don't think there are dinosaurs in Soul Eater, unless I'm mistaken. Like, the fact that the world of Fire Force is still basically intact, that, you know, the Tokyo Empire is still this kind of steampunk, what's the word the official release used? Clockwork Metropolis? Where I'm at in Soul Eater has not shown us Tokyo, if Tokyo ever does show up. But I don't think it would be described as a Clockwork Metropolis. Let me see if I can find if, like, there is a Tokyo on the Soul Eater wiki. Though I'm not sure if there is or not. No, there is not. So maybe, I guess, I don't know. But it just doesn't really feel right. Like, this doesn't feel like Soul Eater. And I can't quite put into words the why. Anyway, I am glad we're having a bit of an epilogue, even after this sort of credit scene we have here at the end of the chapter. Just because, like, this show has a huge cast, and I love so many of them, and I want to check in with them at least a little bit before the end. And given the title, A World Without Spontaneous Human Combustion, it feels like that might be a sort of, let's just check in on everyone for the last 2 chapters, or at least for the first half of the epilogue, just to see how everyone in the world is doing without spontaneous human combustion. And, like, maybe it'll still end up leading to Soul Eater somehow, and I'll bitch about that when it does. But it does really feel like the plot of Soul Eater is over. Not of Soul Eater, Fire Force. The plot of Fire Force is over. And, you know, I have my problems with that. There are still plenty of things that feels like they were going to be important that never ended up being important. The Woman in Black is the big one. And also, like, where the Evangelist came from, Beyond the Rift. All of that was sort of built up as this big mystery back in China, and then we never really touched on it again. I don't know. I mean, the pillars are problems too, but I went over that last week, so whatever. That is what it is at this point. And in the end, but, like, leaving all that beside, I'm a sucker for a cute ending, and, you know, I was gritting during this whole, it was the moment that the boy who was called the devil found hope the day I joined the 8th, so I can't be too hard on it. And honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all ends up. You know, for better or for worse, Fire Force is ending, and it might be Soul Eater, it might not, but, like, it might be, but either way, it's the end of Okubo's career, which is kind of the big problem with Soul Eater prequel theory, is that, as someone said a couple weeks ago in the comments, Okubo can't really explore that meaningfully, given that he's not writing a series after this. But whatever. There's so much going on here. And while parts of it are weird, again, I in this retrospective bit, I haven't really talked about how weird who like the 8 powers that God takes away, seemingly or distinctly including Benny, and also seemingly including Arthur. It's weird, and I don't quite understand what that's supposed to mean, because we only get that tiny little bit of Benny. And I suppose everyone lost their flame powers, so maybe Benny's just a bit of a red herring there? But there still is something weird. Like, maybe it's just that, like, actually either Amaterasu or Sumire didn't end up deciding to die. And so, God was able to take whichever of their powers it was, whichever one of them lived, while the one who actually died fades away. I don't know. It's still a really weird bit, because that Benny bit, like, maybe it's a red herring, but also it doesn't seem to be a red herring, because none of the other second and third gens describes anything being pulled out of them, which is what makes it so weird. I don't know. Maybe the epilogue will give us some answers as to that. But as for this, the plot of Fire Force is over. And the gang's all here together again, and it's real cute. I love this group hug. That's our thumbnail right there, in case, I mean, y'all know already that that's our thumbnail, but, like, it's so good. It's so delightful. And, you know, even if this ends up being Soul Eater prequel theory, I'm still excited to see how this series that I've spent so much time with over these past several years comes to an end. And during the final chapter, I will talk a good bit about, like, some more grand scope of what, like, Fire Force has meant to me over the past 6 years or so. But for now, we still have 2 chapters left. We still have an epilogue to go. And I'm excited to see how exactly we leave this world once and for all. So with that said, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you'll enjoy the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, you know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!